you can't force yourself to believe in something you don't. If somebody put a gun to your head and say you've got to say you believe in God, you'd say yes, I do. But you can't make yourself believe in something you don't.
Yeah.
But I genuinely do believe that architecture improves people's physical, mental and spiritual well-being.
Welcome back to the Earth Circle. If you're joining us for the first time, the Earth Circle is all about trying to answer the question, is there a version of the future that we all want to live in? And we've come here today to meet with somebody who knows a lot about how we're going to live in the future. It's actually the president of the RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects. And in this final episode, we hear about Chris's personal journey, how he grew up, the conditions that he grew up, the community that he grew up, the expectations that were on him to follow a different route, and how his mother was very supportive about him becoming an architect, even though it was slightly against the odds at the time that he did that. Very, very motivating way to finish this conversation. I do hope you enjoy it. So maybe we can talk about that transition from the 12-year-old that saw Neil Armstrong take one small step for man to where we are today. And certainly one of the things I heard about was there was a moment in your life where your mother basically said, if you drop out of school and don't go to college, I'll never speak to you again. How did that come about?
I haven't really thought about it for 40 odd years, but when people ask me why I wanted to become president of the RIBA, you then start to think about what's led me to be here. So when I was, my dad died when I was 3, and I grew up in this quite a small village called Stanley in between Nottingham and Derby, and it was a very tight-knit community. I had a paper round and everybody knew me and I knew everybody, and my dad had been a lay preacher at the church, and I think my mum wanted me to follow in his footsteps. So from the age of 6 to 16, I went to church 3 times every Sunday, and my uncle was also a lay preacher, and they were quite a religious family, and so that and looking back on it, you don't see this at the time, but being part of a small community and having this expectation in a way that you might become a vicar. The vicar was really disappointed when I told him I was going to study architecture instead of theology. But to me, I'd picked up this book called Your Architect, which was published by the RIBA, and it described everything that an architect did. Mm-hmm. And most of it was about the community, about your role as an architect is not just to the person that pays your salary or your fees. It's about the community, and the buildings you design are for society, not just the client. Yeah. And it almost described this sort of pastoral care, which seemed to be really like what a vicar did. Yep. But instead of it being based on religion, it was based on design. So I unfortunately, you can't force yourself to believe in something you don't. If somebody put a gun to your head and say you've got to say you believe in God, you'd say yes, I do. But you can't make yourself believe in something you don't. Yeah. But I genuinely do believe that architecture improves people's physical, mental and spiritual well-being. Yep. If it's done right, it's a wonderful thing. Yep. So so I do have a sort of religious belief that good design is the way to go. Yeah. But because I was part of a small community, most of the people in that community were saying, "Oh, won't it be great when you can leave school and get a job?" Mm-hmm. And help support your mum, like she brought you and your brother up on her own. Yeah. And so I said, I had a place to study on a John Lewis management course, and I said to my mum, I'm going to leave school, and she said, you've got the opportunity. She had to leave school at the age of 14. Wow. And she was incredibly bright, but had never had an education after. So, and she said, you've got to take this opportunity. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, she didn't live to see me qualify as an architect.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So there's lots of reasons why, and you know, the reason I chose the RIBA is that it helped me set up my practice. It helped me get my first jobs by putting Andrew and I on shortlists for things.
Yeah.
And I want to do the same for young people now. And I think partly because the reason I don't have much patience is because when your dad's died when he's 38,
yeah,
you just realise, you know, you've got to do something.
Life's too
There's
short.
a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
You can't sit around thinking, oh, I'll do that next year. So if I want to do something, I'll do it now, rather than wait around to do it, because you might not be around in 10 years' time.
It's so true, isn't it? And I mean, life just catches up on you if you don't. If you don't watch out.
Also, you've got to enjoy it. I'm not. I know, but whenever anybody's asked me to do something, I've generally said yes, because, you know, it might not work out the way that you want it to, but you learn such a lot by doing it. Whereas if you say no, you're never going to get that experience.
Absolutely. I mean, and you know, if I look back as well, I believe you met your business partner Andrew on the first day, I think, of your career or your degree. Sorry, in Leicester. You were at Leicester Polytechnic. You were going to do graphic design. And then you saw the book and you decided, no, actually, I'm going to become an architect. And on the first day, it was like, Chris and Andrew, you two work together, and you kind of almost never stopped, I guess.
Yeah, purely in alphabetical order, Weston and Williamson, we were put together.
Oh, is that right?
we found we liked working together. Andrew, we had different skills, but the same sort of view on outlook. And it was the time of the first oil crisis in the late 70s, and we both won prizes for energy conservation. So it's that sort of has driven us to where we are now, really. But it also in life, you meet a few people, a handful of people if you're lucky, that take you to the next stage. So one of them was my art teacher at school, a guy called Dick Venning, and then Andrew. You know, so people that you meet people and they
the catalyst.
They say, well, you've got this far.
Yeah.
Go do this, and it was Andrew's idea to set up in practice.
Yeah.
And you know, and then other people you meet in the offices you work in that take you to the next level, or a client will say, you know, you can do this, or and you know, it's really important to recognise who those people are. Yeah. And you know, I've had great enjoyment in my life mentoring young architects, people that have joined our practice as a graduate, that are now over in Australia running our Australian office. So it's great to see, because I think we all need to help each other, and I've had great help along the way. Yeah. And it's great to be involved in fantastic projects, but it's also nice to be able to help other people in their career, and you know, because it's mutually beneficial. Yeah.
There's a hero of mine. He's a guy called Ricardo Zemler, and cutting the very long story short, his father had a company in, I believe, Brazil, definitely South America, and he had to take over the business, even though he didn't even want to get into business. But I believe the father got ill, and at a very young age became the CEO of a relatively large corporation. He made it an incredibly large corporation, and he did it in ways that were revolutionary. Already in the 80s, he, for instance, introduced the idea that people could decide what they earn themselves. You set your own wage. He talked about remote working and taking Wednesday afternoon off so you could go to the cinema with the kids. And it worked, and it really worked very, very well. And in a speech I heard with him once, he said, when I hear about these very rich people like Warren Buffett saying, I'd like to give something back, I can't help but think they took too much in the first place.
Yeah, there is that, yeah.
When I listen to you, and also doing the research for this podcast, you seem to be somebody that gets a lot of pleasure out of giving something back, helping the next generation to get that foot up. Like, you know, I have the feeling you feel lucky for what happened to you throughout your career, and that you want to make that possible for as many other people as possible. certainly the impression I get in your vice presidency at the RIBA for international, and also currently, just in September, you've taken over the presidency for 2 years. Is that a fair description?
I think it. I mean, I think the older you get, the more you realise that, you're only here to help everybody else. Really, you're not. If I can't see the point of. I mean, you have to sacrifice such a lot, and you have to earn that sort of money, and it's some of the clients that we've had in the past doing expensive refurbishments on their houses, they're not very nice people. I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
I think all the people that I admire are people that do well, want to do the right thing, and they're not massively rich, but they're the people that I admire, and they have a long career. They don't make a ton of money and then sail around the world. They're constantly doing interesting things.
Yeah.
So I think, you choose your own heroes, I suppose, and choose your own way. But I've always, I mean, maybe I should have been a vicar, but I think that's what we're here for, I think. And when I look at the people in the village that I grew up in and the community, that's all they were interested in, is helping each other. And so that, I think that rubs off on you. And you there's no point in, being the best in the world, the best architect in the world, if nobody likes you.
Yeah.
I think, so I think it's you work out yourself what it is that makes you happy, I think.
They always say it's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's much nicer to. I mean, I'm one of the things I'm just finishing is writing a play about the rivalry between Leonardo and Michelangelo. Really? And Michelangelo wanted to do everything. He was really bitter if somebody won a commission that he thought he should have won. Mm-hmm. And he died hoarding money underneath his bed without many friends, but having done a massive work, whereas Leonardo died almost penniless, but in opulence, because he was being looked after by the King of France, and he was a nice guy, and he had loads of friends. Yeah. He never finished anything, but he had loads of ideas, and they had completely different attitudes to what they were going to leave behind. And I know which one I admire most, but other people would say, well, Michelangelo did more stuff, and it's all very well doing loads of stuff, but it's not. If nobody likes you, why are you doing it?
Why would you do it? Yeah. And is this going to be playing? Because I know you converted a church in your local town where you grew up, and it's an arts centre now, right?
Yeah, so it's being workshopped at the moment at Derby University at the Performing Arts Department. So that's the aim that we use, because I'm trying to promote the talent in the East Midlands of artists and actors and musicians and architects as well. We had 90 architecture students from Trent University doing a project there. So that's the aim.
Okay. Well, I mean, I really do have to say, I think if you look back at what you've achieved so far, I think you can really say that you've left a lot of positivity, or you've created a lot of positivity for the world. And I certainly really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the time you've taken for us today. As I say, we're passionate about knowing what's going to be in the future, and to work out whether one group or the other group is going to be happy and the other one's sad, or whether we're going to all meet with a bad compromise in the middle. And if I talk about the future now, is there anyone you would recommend that we should do a podcast with to find out whether there's a version of the future that we all want to live in, Chris? Who would you say we should speak to next?
Good question. I think there's some great young architects that I've met recently. And they have different visions of the future, and they're doing great things promoting architecture to young kids that wouldn't normally get involved. So I think getting some younger voices Because I mean, you know, I think the new generation is that we have to pass the baton to them.
Okay.
And find out what their concerns are, and that most of them are. I mean, there's some great young architects that I've been mentoring that would be great additions to the podcast.
I would love to do like a little brainstorm with a few of them, get them together and get them to argue about what the future is going to be like. I would be passionate about that. Sounds like a great idea.
Okay.
Well, listen, Chris, I do want to watch your time. I really do appreciate all the time you found for us today, all the great things you're doing, all the things we've spoken about, for your honesty, your transparency, your advice, and just this attitude of sharing and trying to make the world a better place. It's been an honour to meet you. Thank you
very much. Thanks, I really enjoyed it.
So that was the fourth and final part of our interview with Chris Williamson. And I do hope you agree that it was a very, very inspirational experience listening to Chris. If you like what you've heard here, then please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, or even better, go to patreon.com and subscribe there. We really do appreciate your interest in this, and you know what? I'd love to ask you to share our films, like it, and all that sort of stuff, but maybe the most important thing is, if you've been inspired by Chris Williamson, then do something good for the planet today.